It's 6:23. It's time to take a look at your money. The United States and China are the #1 and #2 largest economies in the world. Combined, they account for about 43% of the world's total economic output. But the ongoing trade dispute between these two countries continues to escalate. On Wednesday, President Donald Trump raised his tariff on Chinese goods to 145%. China responded by raising its tariff on American goods to 125%. Financial advisor Mark Gravicheski joining us now live on Zoom to break this down for us. Good morning, Mark.
Morning, Devin. Great to see you again, as always.
Yeah, a lot to get to, and you make the argument that China is really the focus within President Trump's global trade tariffs. Why do you think that is?
President Trump has long argued that countries around the world place, tariffs, quotas, trade restrictions on U.S.-made goods and engage in unfair trade practices. But Trump views China as the very worst of the offenders. China heavily subsidizes its steel and aluminum industry. This allows Chinese manufacturers to literally flood the global marketplace with cheap steel and aluminum that U.S. manufacturers simply can't compete with. Second, Trump also claims China violates international treaties by intentionally devaluing its currency, and this makes Chinese goods cheaper to buy and harms our manufacturing industry. And then, there's the ongoing theft of corporate assets and technology. Now, in this latest tariff escalation on Wednesday, Trump has kind of excluded many technology-related items such as, cell phones, laptops, and microchips. But that may well be a negotiating tactic, as there's now uncertainty on just how long that exemption might last.
Now, what are some of the biggest challenges President Trump faces in this escalating trade dispute with China?
Look, the biggest factor in these trade disputes is economic leverage. It's literally using the size and strength of your economy to both impose and absorb economic punishment. And Trump's strategy is simple: renegotiate your trade policies with us or be willing to place your economy at risk. But China's economy is the second largest in the world. But to me, Devin, I think the biggest, X factor, so to speak, is that China is a communist country. And think about it. Right now, Trump has a lot of political capital. He's coming off an election win. He's still very high in popularity for now. But in China, there are no elections. The entire nation, the entire economy it's literally run by the Communist Party and its president and its leader, President Xi. And the party leadership can simply decide that its citizens will endure a brutalizing economy rather than concede to President Trump. So, China may decide it will play a punishing waiting game in the hopes that it can draw President Trump into more favorable negotiations.
What about Canada, Mexico, and the European Union? Do you think these disputes have the potential to drag on for an extended period?
I would say no offhand, but look, Canada's economy is about 7% the size of ours. Mexico, about 6% the size. Neither Canada or Mexico have the economic size or strength for an extended trade dispute. And we're already starting to see cracks in the unity of the 27-nation European Union, as some nations are already trying to seek separate negotiations with Trump. But I think Trump will be more open to compromise with Canada, Mexico, and the European Union if this dispute with China continues to escalate. I think, again, Trump views China as the biggest risk to the U.S. economy and the biggest offender of all these unfair trade practices. So if this dispute with China, kind of starts to drag on a little bit, I think he'll more likely want to kind of, clear off his plate a little bit on these lesser disputes with Canada, Canada, Mexico, and the European Union, so he can focus more on China, which again I think is his main focus and ultimate goal.
A lot of moving parts, and we'll be following it day to day.
A lot of moving parts.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark, and we'll see you next Monday.
Enjoy your week, Devin. Take care.
You too.